Cool. So, hey, everybody, we are super excited to be here today. We have a very excellent session in store for you. Just some introductions real quick. So, I am Ivan, lead product marketing here at Material Security. I am joined today by Snegha, who is on the product team. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. This session is being recorded, so we will send a follow-up note afterwards with a recording. I'll also write up a kind of a blog post with some of the takeaways. So we will get that to you probably sometime tomorrow. We have a lot of time here. We have time for questions. So feel free to use the Q&A or chat function in Zoom. I'll try to keep an eye on it as they come in, and then of course we'll have some time at the end. All right, enough housekeeping items. Let's get started. We are super excited to be here because we are here to introduce a brand new product, which is data protection for Google Drive. So today we're going to cover a bit of context on why we built this product the way that we did. I'm going to walk through a live demo, and then Snegha is going to cover some of our upcoming roadmap themes, which is all very good stuff. So I'm really glad you're all here. Now, the last time that we did one of these showcase sessions, we did a deep dive into our phishing protection product, and we have come a long way in covering total email security needs from inbound threat detections all the way to automated response workflows. We have also come a very long way with data protection. So prior to this new product release, if you're not familiar, we covered email data protection in depth, and we have a very unique approach to syncing and classifying the historical contents of employee mailboxes over all time. And then we apply a layer of authentication on messages that contain sensitive data. So our customers who really appreciate the level of depth that we get to with email have been asking us to tackle files as well. And we started with Google Drive. But just before we dive into the new product, a quick refresher on material security if you're new to us. So we secure your productivity suite, whether that's Google Workspace or Microsoft 365. Obviously, this being a Drive session, we're going to be focused on Google Workspace, but we also do this similarly for Microsoft environments. And we do this through a unique combination of email security, user behavior analytics, and data loss prevention. Of course, we have a lot of great customers who all have very nice things to say about us, which is fantastic. Now, the thing to remember about these platforms is they're not just another SaaS application in your arsenal. They're really critical infrastructure to the business. When we think about it, these platforms are home to all of your people, all of your content, and all of your communications over all time. And because of that, they are very messy and they're very complex. So we just believe that warrants focus and depth. So when we at Material, who are primarily known for email security, tackle a domain like shared files in Google Drive, it's because we believe they're just related efforts within this kind of larger productivity suite environment. And rather than try to treat different security use cases with disjointed tooling, we try to really bring it all together as best we can, and really focusing on these environments. And by focusing, that allows us to get to the depth that's required to actually make a difference. So with that, let's talk about this new product and what it kind of means to go deep into Google Drive. Now, I think it's pretty safe to say that every Google Workspace administrator just knows how quickly Drive can become just this messy sprawl of very loosely shared confidential information. Now, this is definitely nobody's fault. It's just inevitable. Like, the product is very much designed for collaboration. It's part of the productivity suite. So a key reason why a lot of our customers were so eager for us to tackle this domain is that it's near impossible to answer just fundamental questions about what's in Drive and where it's shared, right? So if you're a Google Workspace administrator, there's no real central view in the dashboard to kind of look across the total footprint. You kind of have to go, dive in folder by folder, file by file, right? And if you're, trying to build stuff on your own using the Drive API just alone is very costly. It's very complicated, right? And so trying to answer these fundamental questions are really important to risk. And like, nobody likes blind spots, but we're fairly used to having some blind spots. But when you have a footprint like Drive, these blind spots can be really detrimental to anything related to data governance, related to compliance. There's just a lot of sensitive content, and it exists in users' drives and it exists in shared drives across the organization. So just trying to answer fundamental questions there is just really hard. And then, of course, where it's shared, like thinking about exfiltration paths, it's very easy to share files in folders inside a drive. It's like it was designed for that. They might pop up a warning to say, are you sure you want to share this outside the organization? But how many people actually look at that warning? Just the daily use, the daily permission sprawl, the daily public sharing, it's hard to get a handle on that. So if you're trying to figure out, what potential exfiltration paths are out there, it's just really difficult, like using the, built-in dashboard or trying to build stuff yourself. But when we actually think about the risk associated with Drive and actually mitigating risk, it's not always that simple, right? Because again, these are productivity suites, they're designed for collaboration. So how can we effectively distinguish between what's normal business behavior and what is a very high risk scenario? We don't always have all of the context or fully understand the intent of use. So that the line that gets thrown around a lot, security without impacting productivity, it gets used in various contexts, but I think it's just like really crucial in this context because literally we're talking about the productivity suite. So how do we secure this environment without getting in the way? Now, the way that I've been thinking about this a lot since we've been talking about this product is there's this kind of untenable risk that lies in these toxic combinations of sensitive data, excessive permissions, and improper sharing. Right. So files in Drive are naturally going to contain a ton of sensitive data. They're going to be worked on together and shared, internally and externally. But when these forces, kind of overlap, that's when you actually have to be really careful. Just thinking of a few scenarios here, and you could probably, your wheels are probably turning, but you could have employee records that might contain a direct deposit information that might be viewable within the organization, right? That's kind of a toxic combination. Or you have a financial document, it's accidentally shared externally with edit rights. I mean, somebody could mess with your taxes. That sounds terrible. You might have personal health records that are accidentally, wide open via a public sharing link, right? So like, the list here is obviously endless, but the trick really for us, we think, is getting precise on finding these toxic combinations. And so that's really our aim, right? So it's just getting precise. And we're going to see this live in a demo, so I won't talk about this too much, but I just want to cover a little bit about how this works behind the scenes. And so this was an engineering feat in many ways. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes to get to this point where we can actually find and fix these toxic combinations. The first thing we do, and if you're familiar with Material, how we work with data protection in email, is we go and we connect with your Drive environment. There's a set of authorization scopes that give us access to Drive, right? So if you're already a customer and you're connected with us with a Google Workspace, there's just a kind of an added authorization scope. What we do is we go sync that entire Google Drive footprint. So all of the user My Drives and all the shared drives. You can choose which ones you want to sync. But we're going to go sync that environment. Going to go do a look back over time. And we're going to build that out into our underlying data platform, which is a structured data warehouse. And in this context, it is all of the file contents. It's the file metadata. It's the permission sets and the sharing settings. So we build that out. We build that into a structured data warehouse, and then we run all the contents against our set of detections, right? So we have a bunch of categories across personal information, financial information, health information, confidential information, and we will highlight any matches that we find. We'll see this live in a demo. So we are looking at the contents, right? So we are actually going in, building out the data model of not just file metadata, but the actual contents themselves. And so when we look at documents or spreadsheets or slide decks, PDFs or images, we're actually looking at the contents themselves. So we can be a little bit more precise on the nature of what's inside. Now, we also then, within that data platform, we do some calculations around permission sets and sharing. If you've worked with, any IAM platform and, cloud IAM platform, they can get really complicated really fast. Like compared to AWS IAM, like the actual permissions and actions are very simple in Drive. You're either a viewer, you're a commenter, or an editor. But what makes it messy and complicated is various forms of like inheritance. I could belong to a group. You could have folder permissions that cascade down. You have shared drives. there's a lot of different ways to give people access at the permission level. And then there's a lot of other ways you can share that content that might override permissions, right? So you can just make a file public via a public link, right? So that's going to trump everything. Or you can just, things can be viewable within the organization, or they can be, just like restricted and locked down. So calculating who has access and who can, do what to these files, it takes a little bit of extra work to model that effectively. So we do that. We'll see that live. And then the remediation. Okay, this is the last thing that we do. And right now, well, you'll see this live right now. You can, revoke external sharing on select files. And, that can be based on a search. You can do it on an individual file. You can do it on a bunch of files. But we will then basically take those calculated permission sets. If we notice it's something shared externally that, you determine shouldn't be, you can very quickly revoke that. And we can do that at pretty large scale. So we're definitely going to see a lot of that. Now, Snegha is going to walk through a lot of the roadmap stuff of where we're taking this. This is a GA product as of last week. But we have a really awesome search and discovery toolkit that makes this possible. But so much of the hard work, like I can't stress this enough, of the engineering feat was in those kind of first two phases here, like discovering the total environment, like actually being able to model it in our data platform, and then be able to calculate and make sense of permissions and sharing settings. Like that alone is huge. And so in order to get precise, we needed to do a lot of that work. And now that we're taking that precision into the product, which we're exposing to you, first by a kind of a search and discovery toolkit. All right, I'm going really fast on slides because I want to get to the product. There's just one more here. I just want to talk a little bit about, why this matters, what some of the, potential use cases are for this. Obviously, there's a lot of compliance, requirements around confidential information and how content is shared, both internally and externally, right? So it's really hard to get, least privilege access in Google Drive. I mean, you can just throw that out the window, but there's like a right size that makes sense that's going to solve a lot of compliance. And just having a handle on, the total footprint, and then getting really specific into certain things on who has access. Now, thinking about, active use cases, very common, it's unfortunate, but you obviously want to protect your IP. You want to prevent IP theft, either from malicious insiders or, account takeover scenarios. So knowing where your confidential information sits and being able to actually classify it accordingly and then apply access controls effectively is going to really help in that. And that kind of cascades down to, stopping malicious insiders and, containing accidental exposure. It's like I said, it's very easy to share content in Drive. So just kind of helping the organization kind of understand when they might be doing things that they shouldn't. And, as a security team, just trying to contain that as best you can. And the last one, this comes up a lot. Let's just say someone's leaving the organization, they've got 2 weeks left. You might want to go and say, hey, what do they have access to? It might be weird if they did a big data dump of all the confidential information on their way out. That on a one-off, I mean, unfortunately, it happens on mass layoffs. Like, you've got a lot of different people leaving. It's definitely something you kind of want to pay close attention to. But really, the key it kind of comes down to is you've got blind spots in Drive. It's inevitable. So we're going to try to help you eliminate those. But then we're also going to try to block those exfiltration paths as best we can, really pinpointing those toxic combinations. So with that, I want to jump into a demo. I'll just pause to see if there's any questions that have come in yet. All right, not yet. Good. That's right, because everybody wants to see product, as you should. Okay. Cool. Let me just session expired. Oh no. Let's see. It happens. Authentication. Cool. All right. Okay. We are here in our new file search interface, right? So if you've used Material before, we've got a number of areas in the product. So posture management, going through risk reports, the user behavior, sensitive content, data protection is, locking up sensitive content in emails. Now we do that, with files. identity protection, looking at, potential shadow IT scenarios, and then phishing protection is doing all the, inbound detection. So we have, a message search, which is going to search across all employee mailboxes, and now we have file search. And with file search, we built a very nifty new search interface that has auto completion and selectors. You can kind of tab through a bunch of different things. It's really helps kind of guide through the kind of process of assembling these queries that are going to get, really precise. So the way this kind of works, and we built this very specific to Drive. So this is like a search interface for Google Drive. You're not going to find anything like this on the Google Workspace admin dashboard, but everything maps directly to how things work in Drive. So the first thing is we have a number of content classifications. I mentioned across kind of personal, financial, health, confidential information. We started with, I believe it's 16 is the number here at first. We're going to continue to build on atop of this. And Snegha is going to talk a little bit about how the features work. But we built our own ML engine, from years of experience in email. We carried some of that work over to files, but it is worth noting that, files and emails behave differently. The content is a little bit different. So what might, be a customer list in a email is a bunch of bullet points, could be a spreadsheet in Drive, right? So we had to do some work to kind of tweak our engine to make sure it works specifically for files. And then we're doing a lot of the matching and added validation on what we're catching. So this is an area that we're going to continue to evolve. But right now, I can kind of work through a bunch of different categories. We look at file metadata, so we can, search against the content. I can say I want to look for something that's confidential, right? So I'm just going to start doing a bunch of searches here, and then we'll kind of see what we come up with. But you can kind of see that's nice and quick. What else on file? We can do based on ownership, different types of content, whether it's just image or spreadsheet. We look at location. So we're scanning my drives and shared drives. So you can say, I want to look for stuff that's in shared drives that might have a heightened risk profile versus something that sits in somebody's my drive. And then my favorite is all of the sharing, right? So there's so many different ways to share content in Drive. So we break this out. We can determine whether something's shared externally. We can look at individuals that have access, what they have total access to. We can look at stuff that's shared with an email, stuff that's shared with an organization, with a personal email. And then the big mega one is stuff that's shared with a public link, right? So if you're like really worried about locking down Drive contents, this is exactly where you'd start. And this is a demo environment, so I have terrible security posture. Look at all these files that have been shared with a public link. All right, I can do a little bit further here and I can go, all right, what of this is confidential information? You can see some of the analysis here. And we're going to see a few things. All right, so our search results, we've got some basic information, obviously the file name, file ownership. We can see who it's shared with. Now, if you've worked with Drive, right, there's people that have access and then there's general permissions. All that kind of rolls up and ends up to kind of the access control. So in this context, we've got, people that specifically have been assigned access, and then viewer, anyone with a link, that's going to trump all, right? So literally anybody can see this one. It's got confidential information and it looks like it's a financial report. That's what our analysis did. And so let's look into this specific file. This seems a little risky. So we have our analysis here. We can see when we did the last scan. This is a few days ago, and right away we say, okay, this file is viewable outside of our organization. We can see who has access. So we've got a Gmail account. We've got the owner, which is here, and we can see the kind of viewer, commenter, editor. And then we can look at the general access settings, right? So this is going to say, anyone with a link. So that is, very, very dangerous. Our analysis, like I mentioned, we do actually look at the contents of the file. We scan them against our engine. Now, I am a content administrator inside of material security, so I am able to see the contents of the file. This is not, everybody's not going to see this. You want to make sure that you have the right RBAC in place. But if I really want to know what's in this content, I can see our hits, right? So we match confidential information do not share. Seems like a pretty nice way to say do not share. We determine it's a financial report because we hit it's the income statement, balance sheet. So this works, credit cards, social security numbers. We got a bunch more things here. And then, some kind of basic metadata. We can see its location. We got let me look at a few more here. I see that there is a raise hand. If you want to, somebody raise their hand. If you have a question, feel free to pop it in here into the Q&A chat, and then I will address it. Let me just kind of go back here and we'll look at anything. We might see some other things. So as you can see, we got some images here and some documents, presentation here, a spreadsheet we just looked at. So these ones here, so this is potentially a tax document with a social security number. So again, I can kind of pop in here. This is not real information, so won't get too far with that. We've got some more here, social security number with a credit card. Okay, so there's a lot of things here. Our analysis says, yeah, credit card, social security number. I see I've got, a few different people that have access. Now, again, I'm just kind of walking through the search interface, but if we want to like pinpoint those toxic combinations, we want to start to build out some more kind of expanded queries. So we kind of had one already, but let me just do that one again, where it is a category. Oh, that was, if you can hear my doorbell, they're going to have to come back. Category confidential, and we'll just do externally. Okay. This is a pretty good one. Like, this is kind of a pretty basic starting point. The shared externally is looking across, the public link, or if it's shared with outside emails. So it's kind of more all-encompassing of what is considered external. So we already looked at that one. I've got a few files here that look like they might be, recruiting profiles. We can see again who has access to these. But I'm going to go back to that one that we already looked at because I have a feeling I should not be leaking our earnings publicly. It's a great way to get in trouble. So I'm just going to very quickly revoke external access here. Now, part of our access revocation is we break it out by domain. So like externally, we can look at different domains. So this one's pretty obvious. We only have this Gmail. We don't want to have that being shared to Gmail account. So I can decide whether I want to keep whatever the existing permissions are besides the external access, or I can just straight up lock it down, set it to restricted. I think for this one, I'm going to set to restricted. Okay, so what that's going to do is that's actually going to go modify the permission sets, and it's going to do two things to this file. And if we just give it a second. So first, we saw that email went away, which is great. And then the second is the general access went away. So there is no more public link. So we did two things. We removed the public link, and then we removed the external access. So this is kind of a very quick one click to do that. All right, quick question. Can the search be further filtered on shared externally with domains, but some for allow list domains? Yes, let me see what we got here. So when we do shared with, there is a domain function, although I don't know. There might be, I'm looking at the version that's pinned down below. This might be a bug that was fixed, but I'm going to try it anyway. Pray to the demo gods. But yeah, you can search against domains here. I think that's still an active bug on this version. So it's either shared with domain or shared with group or shared with email. So make sure I got the full question here. The allow list, I know that has come up a few times. So that's probably, maybe I'll let Snegha.
Yeah.
You've heard that a few times already, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Really appreciate the feedback there. So one of the ways that we're exploring that is to think of this concept of trusted domains in the product overall, not just for our data protection product, but also for our phishing product and overall just being able to tell us what you consider your trusted domains, be your own or partners. And then the way that we envision that you would be able to incorporate that in data protection is in the UI that Ivan just showed a few minutes ago. where you were able to choose what domains you considered external to revoke access from and things, you would have more control and automation over defining that as your home domains and therefore visualizing external as anything beyond that. So today you'd be able to do this a little manually, but in the future it would be built into the product.
Cool. Awesome. Yes. Thank you so much. Good. All right. So I just did another kind of search here. I'm just going to look for things with personal email because I want to show how that, two things. One, on search results, I can select all, or I can kind of, select a few here and revoke external access. I think because these are SSNs and credit cards, and I see a couple different domains here, I do want to revoke access in bulk. You can do this across, n number of files, and it's pretty fast. But in this context, okay, these are recruiter profiles. You know what? I'm gonna only revoke access to the Gmail, right? Maybe I have a trusted partner here, and I don't want to revoke access. So, like, not loosely related to the last question, in one sense, where we kind of have this notion of trusted domains, like you said, Rick. Right now, you kind of choose by domain, but we do kind of break it out that way at least. And then I'm going to keep existing permissions this time. So this time when I do the revocation, it's only going to revoke the Gmail access. So like you said, the notion of trusted domains is something that we're kind of looking at, and it's not just in this product, but also across the board. Think about how that applies to email and phishing protection as well. Cool. So that time now we have updated. We have permission sets. The myrecruiter.com still has access. Good. All right. So as we kind of mentioned, V1 of this product is very much focused on the search and discovery interface with the remediation of revoking external access. It's about getting precise. The hard work to get this data model into something that we can, work with. You can see how fast the search is. Search is fast across very, very large footprints. So where we're taking this is, is doing a little bit more on, once we have the precise search results, how do we want to handle that, right? So right now, it's very, one by one, I can kind of go through or in bulk revoke access, but there's a lot of things that can be done on top of this. But getting to this point has been a monumental effort. Our team did an amazing job. We're syncing a lot of customer environments right now. We made the announcement just last Tuesday. Had a lot of great interest from folks, and we're seeing some pretty, big footprints come in. And the first thing that we do when we do that sync and we go back across all time, we highlight some of those potentially toxic combinations. And I can say, working with our design partners to get to GA, and then since we've launched this product, about every time we run a sync, we find something. So I definitely encourage everybody after this to, get in touch with us, and we'll run through either, deeper dive demo on some of the, administrative side of the house too, about what it takes to set this up. Again, it's just, adding a couple scopes in Drive, and then selecting, which My Drives and Share Drives you want to enroll. We take over from there, and then after a little bit of time, we can come back and show you what we found, and then you can just start using the search interface right away and go to work. But with that, I want to come back to some slideware. I guess I'll just pop there's any more questions. Oh, one more question. Rather than having a material admin revoke public access to files, could we configure alerts to go to the file owners to give them a nudge towards removing public? I'm so glad you asked that, because absolutely. That is something in our kind of remediations that we're looking into. Again, like, the failure mode of this is a little bit different than other things. Like if you accidentally go revoke access to a bunch of files internally, people know, to kind of go request access again. But if you keep doing that a lot, or if you have like public documents that are shared with community members and people are running into that dreaded "you don't have access" screen, request access, if that happens too often, you might get some pushback on this. So the best thing you can do, if you use us for like, data protection for email, we have the notion of like speed bumps. Same with, with phishing protection, right? Where it's kind of a nudge. It basically, applies a layer of step-up authentication. The user kind of knows, we're not getting in their way too much. They can still access the things they need to access. That wouldn't necessarily apply in the same way here, but what could apply in this model, right, is if I, am sharing a bunch of stuff, And there's a policy in Material that says anything that is confidential and shared externally, you could either straight up revoke that, or you could send a kind of a note to the user. And I think that's the way we're thinking about it is there's various stages of actions to take on these when a policy triggers. And one of them could be, hey, just send them a note. Hey, did you mean to share this externally? Maybe you shouldn't. Just want to confirm that. And it kind of puts it back on the user, and they get smart about that. Maybe they don't ignore that message from Google when you do that. And so that would be one option versus straight up revoking everything. A long answer. I'll let Snehal get to the roadmap stuff, but that is definitely something that we've thought about and have started building. So, all right, one more question. Does the file search cover both the shared drive and individual drives of the users under the domain? Yes, it does. That is pretty awesome. That was a lot of work. Turns out the APIs are different for my drives and shared drives because why wouldn't they be? And also the permission models are slightly different, right? And so shared drives have different modes of inheritance. So we do sync contents across my drives and shared drives, and we understand the difference when we think about the locations of that. So you can choose when you start using the product, you can choose which ones you want to enroll. All right, getting some good more questions. Are there bulk remediation capabilities based on domain, last modified, doc own status? Yes, definitely on domain. So let me look at file, last modified. Oh boy, I have to make sure I know what the format is. Oh no. Uh, I think that's right. Oh shoot. I think that's right.
But yes, pretty much anything in our search filters is able to give you kind of the full list, and you are able to select and decide what you would want to kind of work on from a data set perspective. So
Yes.
domain, doc ownership, last modified, and I'd be very curious to learn, how you'd want those combinations presented to you as we build those to be more automated.
Okay, so file ownership here. Yes. Right. So this is everything that I own. Cool. So yeah, we cover a good amount of those. All right. Remind me that you already support sending a notification through webhooks, or is that in the future? Near future? I'll let stay
Yeah,
on.
so and I think this might be the perfect timing to transition to some of the feature overviews. But so today it's actually everything you see in the UI is API ready. So from the ability to just be able to pull that information and then consume that in the tools you have today, that's available today. In the way that where you're able to automate that we would send you those alerts based on the minute we receive them and have policy around that, that is currently in progress and what I'll walk through in just a second, but it's not in the GA release.
Sweet. Great questions, everybody. I love to see that. It's always a great sign when people are eager to ask questions about how this works. So with that, I will pop back over 2 slides and let Sneha talk a little bit more about what's going on behind the scenes, and then get to some roadmap stuff. And
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Ivan. That was a great demo. I think we all learn something every single time you do it. Hi, everyone. My name is Snegha. I'm on the product management team here at Material Security, and I've been lucky to focus on the Google Drive files and everything we're doing to kind of expand to our vision for the productivity suite overall. So really quick, I just wanted to recap some of the things that you saw really come together in use cases for you in the demo into how we kind of built it and prioritized it. And the thing that's most exciting to me, be it in forums like this or in customer meetings and demos, is, we wanted to make sure we were addressing what we heard most in our GA release, but we want to be a product and company that you grow with. So everything, we're talking about with feedback, near term, long term, we want to partner with you on building that. So that's really what this conversation is about. So for starters, when we started thinking about Google Drive and visibility and where we wanted to start, we wanted to be able to say that regardless of the type of footprint you have in Google Drive, so be that be my drive, shared drives, the type of scale that you have, that you can come into Material and immediately sync that into the system and the data warehouse. So how long are we looking at? This is kind of an important piece to think about. So, as you know, some of your drives may have lasted over the years or some are newer, but what we really tried to prioritize is what is most important to your business recency. So, when you first initially sync with material, you will actually be looking at any activity that we have seen in the last 6 months. We're using Google's activity API, so that means we're not limited to any files that you just created in the last 6 months, but anything that you interacted with is what we would start with in terms of sync. And then, of course, moving forward, we would continue to see that fresh sync. I'll caveat here, and we'll talk about this in a second with roadmap, but this is something we're definitely looking to expand longer term, where we think about how far does history mean and how do we get to a place where we can look at anything in your drive from the start of when it was created. Next slide. So the next piece that you saw in the demo was related to file details and the information that we're surfacing. So we're looking at not just the metadata, but also the full file itself based on the file size. And we're able to surface that information in a way that's not only actionable, but also very visibly clean and easy to understand and use. There's so much that goes on in your Google workspace, and it's hard to actually action on those. So for starters, we updated the search interface to really include all the different MQL commands, being able to auto-complete and drop down. You notice that both Ivan and I were able to answer many different questions based on those auto prompts and definitely not based on just our memory. And being able to scan across many things that you have really provide that interface for you to start to say, what is it that I want to look at or even visualize in our environment? And an area that we're looking at with this is how we start to inform that start of policies, as well as start to think about, would you like to save a search? Is that something that you want to repeatedly run a certain way? But for starters, you go right in there, you're able to surface this information. The clean UI gives you everything from ownership, access, last modified, as well as immediate sensitive data tags. Next slide. So, we touched on the word sensitive already, but, that's really the big crux of what we're actually doing after that sync. So the way to think about that is we're using a combination of Google's native DLP along with the in-house expertise that we've built around how we want to assess that information. A combination of that is what informs the sensitive tags that we're creating. Currently, it's around 16 to 17 tags that we're offering. Of course, more to come in the future, and all of that is very well documented for you in our product. Now, a lot of the times customers ask, what's the level of trust we have? Or like, where's this information coming from? How do we visualize it? So this is where really showcasing that to you in the analysis, what is actually in the document? Is this repetitive? Is this real? As well as leaning on both Google expertise within Google, as well as the expertise we've built up, and growing that into future models is exactly why we're able to build that confidence and trust along with you into these data. Next slide. Now, the one thing we keep getting asked is, now that we have all this information, how do we act on this? And the biggest thing, of course, that you saw in the demo was the individual and bulk revocation. And as you know, there's a few different pieces to that. You can look at an individual file and ask yourself how you'd like to handle that file. You could look at it from the perspective of a search filter and bulk remediate from there. And you can also update and view general permissions. It is surprising how often we lose track of what the default permissions are, including, oh, turns out this file was open all along and nobody knew, or it's completely open to a specific domain and that's not actually what you consider to be restricted access. So being able to mimic that, but also let you act on it, is critical as part of this feature set. Next slide. Now, the piece that we wanted to show you here when we showed you this UI is, I think there was a great question around trusted domains and thinking about what those things mean to you. One of the things I thought about was there are certain teams at the company that obviously should be sharing certain information with our lawyers, right? Or they should be working with our reseller partners. It makes complete sense. So some of the things that we've started to look at here is, first, of course, in our GA release, start to provide you with the options to say, okay, here's what we consider external for you just based on what we know. Tell us how far you'd like to limit this or not. What we'd like to grow to is start getting intelligent about that and give you the ability to put those prompts into the system and define what external means. And then over time, of course, also start to understand, is this normal? Is this abnormal? And like what that means to you as a company to then define external access. So with that, we'll go to the next slide and actually start talking about something that we are spending our energy working on right now. Like Ivan said, the engineering team has been hard at work, really figuring out what I consider the core infrastructure of how Google data protection was built. And now we get to do the fun parts of building on a lot of the use cases that you've brought up and mentioned. So the first thing that we're working on is really this holistic way of thinking about a policy engine. Now, when you hear policies, it's the easiest way that I think about that is what kind of questions do I want answered when we look at the data? So first, we want you to be able to establish what sensitive content even means to you. What does risk mean to you as a company? It may not just be the tags that we're providing. You'd want to expand that. So we'd want to offer the ability for you to tell us what sensitive means, and then that informs policies. Now, from there, one of the common sense of feedback we get, and I think this came up in one of the questions as well, is, okay, so now that we're getting that information, what can I do about it? And typically, you're boxed into very specific things that you do either within Google or your other customized tools, or it takes too much work. What we want to do is really meet you where you are in terms of how you want those things to hook together. In some cases, it could be, well, let somebody know on Slack and like, ask if this is okay. It may be an incident in your case, or it could be an email notification. This is where we want to build something which is something that you can build off of and customize on, but also has recommendations built in from our perspective out of the box. So you'll have those flexible workflows. Now, some of you may be email customers, and a topic we talk about there a lot is definitely what is considered, something that comes into the triage for the IT team and how much are they handling every single day. Now, similarly, when we start thinking about alerting and notifications, the immediate question after that is, okay, whose pool does it fall into? Who's managing the risk that comes through that? Who's managing what is truly risky, what's actionable, or what's reporting? And what we want to do is be able to provide admins the ability to also be a service provider to the customers in their business and say, here's what we offer, here's how we're going to handle it, and remove that burden from just the IT team, and also provide automation to be able to start to say, this is how we are going to intelligently offer automations, but also if you need customization, here's how you would do it without the burden falling on just one team. Last but not the least, I know I've used the word automation a few times, and the reason that's really important is because there are certain pieces of information that we all know and feel comfortable saying are rules that you want to stay aware of. An example could be that you know what external access means in your company, and let's say there's been a file that has had external access for a while, but it's been untouched, or there's certain behaviors that we've seen on it. You may want to revoke that access after a certain period of time that you have provided permissions to a file that has been shared that way. And when you have these pieces built in, you're able to then be able to understand, what are the changes that are occurring? Is this something you'd like to be notified on immediately? Is this something you'd like to act on? So really, in summary, in what we are actively currently working on is this automated remediation workflow, which is part of our larger way of thinking about a detection engine and starting to say, here's the problems that I'd like you to address, or the answers I'm looking for in this information. Tell me how I can be notified and act on it, and then let's do something about it, be it an incident, be it an automation. With that, let's go to the last slide here with.
I'm just gonna add one thing
Yeah,
because it's hard to
sure.
see in the screenshot, and it was part of that question. So if you can like squint your eyes and look at that remediation tab on the right, what you'll see is basically the question that was asked around, do I have to revoke or can I actually give a nudge? So in this context, what we have is the sequence from a remediation perspective is to first notify the file owner. So hey, did you mean to share this? Wait a day, so give them a day. All right. If they don't self-remediate after a day, then you can move that file into a quarantine folder. And that quarantine folder could be something that you as a security team have just restricted access to. You you maintain it, you know it's not going to be externally shared, so you can kind of move that file, and that can be one option from a remediation flow. So I think that one very much maps to the question that was asked. It's a very small screenshot. So I just wanted to jump in for that.
No,
All right,
absolutely. Thank you.
on to the roadmap. Take
Yeah.
it away.
So a couple themes, of course, like I said, this is the start, and we're really excited to build where this goes for our vision as a company. And I wanted to share those themes with you because maybe you have feedback and maybe we'll be working together on building those with you. So first is what, we just discussed, policies and detections, which is how would you like to, and what kind of questions would you like to answer? And the way I see that is, two buckets. One is defined roles and patterns, which is being able to say, if user was part of group X and they did action B, then this is how I would like to respond. Another piece of feedback that we've received is wanting to understand, well, is something off? Like, if this is the way that my environment usually looks like, my folder or user, then if we're seeing something in an action that looks different or an anomaly, how do we act on that? Now, that's something that's going to be for the future, but it's really exciting to start thinking about that as we look at our policy triggers. Customizing sensitive classification tags, we already talked about that, but really quick, it's, we want that to be something that's dynamic. So of course, we'll start with like easy filters and things like that. And I'm very curious to learn as we launch different pieces of the product, how you view custom sensitive tags on email versus files and how you kind of visualize those together. Number two, usability, alerts, and reporting. So we touched a little bit on, how we'd like to receive alerts, be it on Slack or other integrations. I just wanted to share that, integrations are going to be a priority for us over time to really think about what are the pieces of information that we're learning, what are the other tools in your environment, and how do we make sure that you can make the most of your investments, regardless of if it's with us or with other products in the market, to make sure it really comes together. So that integration area means a lot to us. Last but not the least, in that piece, as you've seen, Ivan shared, we've had a lot of customers already start to sync and test the information. And there's so much that we see just within the trial period. And, sometimes you want to be able to visualize that in a certain way pretty much immediately. And so we do want to be able to add into our system the ability to just quickly click and look at important numbers and data about what we've found and what we are continuously finding in your data, even beyond, the search UI and things, so that you can share that with your leadership, share that with your team as you need. Automation and remediation, of course, even today you are able to bulk revoke as well as individually revoke. And like I said, everything's available over API. We want this to be something you can automatically do, and that's already in progress, like we just showed you. And there's so much feedback we've gotten there around what remediation means, right? In some cases, maybe you don't want to fully revoke permissions. Maybe you'd like to leave access be possible, but only for a certain amount of time, and then be able to be check in again. So that's an example. Last but not the least, I think Ivan gave you that example of quarantine and starting to think about what that lock looks like. The way I think of that is the larger theme of what does DLP at rest look like for files? And that includes, for starters, us starting to work on historical sync, which means like being able to sync your files all the way from the beginning so we have that full information. And then starting to ask ourselves, how do we want to protect files at rest? We offer that on email today, where we're able to lock messages. You are able to then build policy around it, or how do users interact and unlock that. And this is really exciting for us because not only can we extend our expertise from the email side to files, but also start to ask better questions about, are files treated the same way in your environment? Do you visualize DLP at rest the same way or in a different way? But these are kind of those, big themes that we're really excited to work on. And of course, we showed you that our priority over the next little period will definitely be on the automations and policies. And we're really excited to bring that to market with you as you continue to give us feedback. And
Awesome.
a question here.
Here's a question. Well, just jump in real quick. This is great to see this kind of laid out like this. I would say for everybody on the line, if your wheels are turning, we'd love to hear, a couple different things. Certainly on what questions you'd like to answer. That's fundamental. If you have some things that you think would be really helpful to you, let us know. Reports. what would be a high value report to you? Like, we didn't want to just go out and dump a bunch of, nonsense charts that didn't mean anything to anybody. So we want to get some feedback here and see what is really going to be the most valuable. Like, we want to make sure that everything in the dashboard is actionable and intelligent. So let us know what would be helpful if it's related to compliance or if it's just, something that you'd like to see. On automations or mediations, what are some of the things that might be valuable to you from either, pinpointing a toxic combination, thinking about time. I think time is a very interesting factor into this, files that haven't been touched in 90 days. It's not always going to be bad. You might have
Mhm.
documents that you haven't touched for a year that are publicly shared because they're community docs. But if those, haven't been touched in 2 years and they contain a bunch of sensitive data, maybe you want some sort of remediation there. So let us know any feedback you have, on that. I think that helps us. It helps Sneha prioritize. She's got a long list to prioritize.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do have a question. Do you want me to take it or do you want to take it?
Yeah, I can take it. So, and just to clarify, I'm assuming this question is related to if we would support systems like OneDrive in the future. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but absolutely. So, directionally as a company, like I said, our vision is to kind of secure the productivity suite. Google Drive was like our big foray into that. We are starting to kind of put our, thinking hats together for OneDrive as we speak, and we hope to have some timelines for you in the near future on that one. But again, if you're starting to see use cases, especially as you test this, that you definitely want to make sure we're thinking about for OneDrive, please share that with us. Ivan and I have, already started to think through the early stages of that.
Yes, that's going to be an endeavor. And if you think about it, right, so it's a very different data repository structurally, right? So the sharing models are different, the inheritance is different. So there's obviously a lot of work that has to be done because we do care enough to get precise and specific within each platform, not just try to fly, at the surface. So there's definitely going to be a good amount of work there to make sure that we're hitting that environment effectively. Cool. We did great on time. There is one more question. Just to clarify, policies detections is not available in the current version. If so, is there a target release date? Correct. Yes. Target release date, I think, is still TBD. Yeah, but it's been in the works. So good. All right. Well, this was a great session. We used up all the time. Got a lot of great questions. They're still coming in. Imagine a trusted vendor or third party is compromised, a single report of all content shared with them. Exactly. Like right now, that would be kind of, manual, but you can kind of look at it that way. But that is certainly something that would be incredibly valuable. And then, just kind of a macro point here, right? We both touched on it, right? Our aim here is to secure the whole productivity suite. And this is a pretty big deal for us, supporting Google Drive as, kind of our first major step outside of email. But these things are so related, right? So I don't think of these as like tangential use cases. We're not changing our focus in any way. This is all part of our focus. And it is part of that much larger vision of working with everything that's in the productivity suite. And that is a whole bunch of efforts. You're wrangling threats all day. They could be phishing attacks, insider risk, account takeover scenarios. There's a lot of threat wrangling. Here we're talking about data wrangling, right? You've got sensitive content in employee mailboxes, sensitive content across files. There's other ways of communication where there's sensitive content being passed around. And then there's kind of configuration wrangling and working with all the different settings across Google and Microsoft environments, potential vulnerabilities or just, high risk settings. All those three things typically done kind of in disjointed ways. Like we're really just trying to bring all that together and just looking at, how can we focus in on the total risk profile of the productivity suite and consider the full attack life cycle, the full threat life cycle. You've got threats from the outside in, that's, phishing attacks, BEC, VIP impersonation. Then you've got threats from the inside out, and that's, account takeover scenario, insider risk, and data exfiltration. So that's really, this is why this is such a big deal for us. If you think about it, I don't know of anyone else at our level of depth that covers these two very prevalent, very deep data repositories in email and file shares the way that we do. And so it's just, we're very excited here in Material. The response from our customers has been awesome so far. So with that, I will stop patting ourselves on the back and say thank you to Snegha for joining. Thank you, everybody, for joining this session. As a follow-up, if you're new to Material, check out everything that we have after on the website. If you're an existing customer and you haven't talked to your, account reps and customer success folks about Drive yet, definitely do that. We'll set up a dedicated session. We can get a POC up and running pretty fast here. So hope everybody enjoy the time. And yeah, that should do it. We thank you.